Jackson Lamb and the Slough House crew are back on a new case in season 2 of the Apple TV Plus original series, Slow Horses. This second season uses the book Dead Lions as its source. So how does this one play out? After a former colleague is found dead, Lamb and the Slow Horses uncover a long-buried secret that could spell danger for the entire United Kingdom. So the first 2 episodes dropped at once, and then there will be 1 episode each week for the remaining 4. This is a quick 6-episode run, with each of them being about 45 minutes. Now, the surviving cast from the first season returns, along with a few new additions to Slough House. And in true fashion, there's very little development or even introduction given to them at the start of the show. As this season goes along, though, we get more insight into each of the new ones and also why they ended up with the Slow Horses. Gary Oldman continues with his dark and biting sarcasm that borders on harassment, and yet it's still funny to watch. He's crotchety and filthy, and he looks like he's having a blast with the character. Jack Lowden also returns as River Cartwright, and while he's still a large focus of the overall story, he doesn't get all the screen time. I am still loving that antagonistic banter between River and Lamb, and as biting as it can be, there's still that sense that Lamb does have a hidden soft spot, and despite what he may say out loud, I think he really does think that River can be a great agent. As much as I enjoyed the first season, I think I like this one even better. The mystery angle is intriguing, and while some of it does feel predictable or obvious, there are elements that kept me guessing all the way through. There's also a building intensity on several fronts, which helps to amp up the excitement and the tension. And when the final 2 episodes arrive, there is a huge urgency that's felt. And I loved the stress that it created as the ticking clock is just multi-pronged, and it affected just about every story arc. Now, the one thing that I'm not totally thrilled about for this season, and it was the same with season 1, the weekly release, it's just not as satisfying of a watch. Yeah, there are cliffhanger endings to so many of the episodes, but I'm afraid that the suspense and the urgency that I'd mentioned is going to be lessened if you don't binge it as a whole, or at least a few episodes at a time. And this is more like a miniseries where the story is contained to just this season. I mean, at least for the most part. We still follow the characters and get to know them more and more each season, but the events from season 1, they don't come into play here, other than being referenced for character moments. Now, I was a bit surprised by some of the emotion that's contained within this season. There are some moments that caught me completely off guard, and while I may not like what the show did specifically, I can respect how much more it engaged me with the story and the characters. And speaking of those characters, one of my favorites from last season was Standish, played by Saskia Reeves. Now, once more, she gets some moments within the story that continue to build out the character and make her very robust. And she's still pretty mysterious, but I love how much of her talent and background is obscured. And then it's slowly eked out for us just in necessary bits for a particular moment in the story. Now, I still haven't read the books that this show is based on, but my guess is that she has a very deep storyline and connection within this, and that we're going to continue to learn more about her, and we're probably going to be surprised as well. Now, something I found odd, but also intriguing, is how this season accentuated Roddy's loner bravado. I mean, it was certainly present in that first season, but here it feels even more dialed up, making him out to be pretty much a jerk in every encounter we see him in. And that's kind of a bummer, because I was beginning to like him by the end of last season. But this go round, it was harder to enjoy the character, or even want to see him on screen because of how off-putting he could be. The 2 new additions to the team are played by Cardiff Kerwin and Amy Fionn Edwards, and thankfully they both get more screen time than Olivia Cook did in season 1. Now, each of them handles a different portion of the story, but both are very charismatic and energetic. And I also found them easy to connect with because their personalities are just a tiny bit sarcastic, but there's also this matter-of-factness and genuineness to them, which makes them pretty likable. And for the visual aspects of this, it looks great. It's very European and cinematic a lot of the time. Now, there are wide shots that minimize the character in favor of just showing surroundings, and I really appreciate how that shows a sense of scale, as just the character will run through an area or maybe even be dwarfed by everything around them. So for me, I was really invested in the story and the characters. I think some of that came about because I was able to binge the entire season as a whole rather than watching it episode by episode. I think you'll have a better time with a binge session, even if it's half the season, and then you wait a few weeks and then binge the rest. I mean, that way you get to experience the growing suspense and anxiety as the story really should be experienced. Now, I had a blast with this, and I continued to laugh at the very dark and dour humor, especially when it was delivered by Gary Oldman. And I hope you have fun with it too. There's no sex or nudity, a lot of profanity, and a bunch of very brutal violence. I give season 2 of Slow Horses 4 out of 5 couches. So, did you enjoy the first season? And have you been looking forward to this new one? Also, do you have a favorite character? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.